Welcome back to Real Life, guys. We experienced some technical difficulties, so we're just going to wait a couple seconds for you guys to get back, but we're really glad for you guys to be here. Valentine's Day, Real Life. We have some really great opportunities for you guys coming up over the next couple weeks. So for freshmen, calling all freshmen, Freshman Overnight is a really cool opportunity for freshmen to meet other freshmen. You can also get to hear from upperclassmen, hearing about the wisdom seniors have to share about their experiences in undergrad over the past 4 years of college and what God's been doing in their lives. You'll also have an opportunity to get a Real Life vintage t-shirt, which you do not want to miss out on. So there'll be opportunities for you to connect with Freshman Overnight through on a virtual platform, as well as connecting in small groups safely for in-person Freshman Overnight. So make sure to mark your calendars for that. That's February 19th and 20th next weekend, and we'd love to see you guys there. Another cool opportunity we've been highlighting over the past couple weeks is summer missions. Summer missions are still happening, and we're really excited to see what God will be doing through summer missions this summer. Summer missions are just a really great way for you to equip yourself to communicate your faith with other people, to grow in your own personal walk with God, as well as to grow in community with other like-minded believers. And so Ohio State is specifically, Crew Ohio State is specifically partnering with summer missions in Chicago, Illinois, as well as Ocean City, New Jersey. And those applications are live right now. Although summer mission may look a little different than previous years, we're going to be making sure we're following all the COVID precautions to make sure everyone is safe and healthy and has a really enjoyable summer mission. And so registrations are live. We'd love to see you guys there. We've already had some students in our movement starting to register for that, so we'd love to see you guys there. You can register through the link in our bio on our Instagram page or on our Crew Ohio State page as well. If you want some more information about what that would look like, we're going to be having an information session on Sunday, February 28th at 7 p.m. on YouTube Live. So tune in there, and registration is open, so feel free to check that out. Tonight, we're going to be highlighting specifically summer mission at Ocean City, and so let's go see what's happening over there.
something amazing, a moment when heaven touches earth. Here in our hearts, Lord, we are waiting for something that's far beyond what we have seen or heard. Let us start the ascension, let's begin the climb up this holy mountain where your glory shines. Further up, further in, just to be with you again. Let us start the ascension. We're fixing our eyes on glory and fire. Your name is branded on our heart.
Hey guys, so in light of Valentine's Day this weekend, we've been sharing some awkward relationship stories, friendship moments throughout the evening. And we've got a couple more submissions that you guys have been sending in that I'll read off. See, there's 3 of them. First one, during my first kiss, I peed in my pants. Second, I thought I was hanging out with a friend, but once we were there, I realized it was a date. He was arrested a month later. That is definitely pretty awkward and uncomfortable. And the last one, the first time I ever made out with a girl in high school, I got a bloody nose and didn't realize it until we pulled apart and I saw the blood around her mouth. Thankfully, she just laughed it off. Yes, definitely really cringy. These have been really fun to read, guys, and so feel free to keep texting that number and sending those in. The top 3 stories will be getting a $5 Stops gift card by the end of the night. And so thanks for sharing those. Every week at Real Life, we love getting to hear from how God has been working in the life of a student in our movement. Today, we get to hear from my friend Natalie Hatch, so let's hear from her.
It's hard for me to think about my relationship with God and not see a story of stark contrast. There's a distinct before and after, but not a clear moment in time that really marks that transition. I can't perfectly retrace my steps with Jesus, but there's one common occurrence in my walk with him where after has felt defined from before. As I've learned the heart of obedience and chosen it, I have experienced God's renewal and restoration in my life like I have in no other way. Growing up in a traditional church, I thought I understood obedience, and I despised it. Church equaled obligation, so I knew what to do and when to do it, but had little to no understanding as to why. It felt kind of like a field trip to a museum. Everyone there was kind of old, you had to be quiet and follow a bunch of rules, and behind this big glass window was God. It was look but don't touch, and Jesus did very little in my day-to-day life other than just kind of be there. I was aware there was some good news of great joy, but to be honest, it seemed like old news of great burden. I had listened to the story of his life so many times and yet had never heard it. I never knew that 1, he wasn't restricted or withheld from me at all, or that 2, his desire was precisely the opposite. I never particularly loved church, and in junior high it became especially hard when it seemed like God was ripping my family apart. But what sounded to me like the crashing of my world was actually the smashing of glass that I perceived between us. That for the first time in my life, I could not rely on myself and felt the weight of needing rescue. And in grace disguised as chaos, Jesus came running. Fast forward through God working a miracle between my parents, all of a sudden my mom was walking with Jesus. Eventually, I ended up on a mission trip I didn't sign myself up for. And the next thing I know, I'm hearing the good news and experiencing the great joy. I'm hearing that this God who I've been around my whole life was not content being separated from me. And more than that, he actually had already made a way to close that separation. Our relationship with Jesus was a completely novel concept to me, but I was so desperate for it. It only took me a couple years to realize that required some action on my part. I didn't take my first real step of obedience towards him until joining a Bible study my senior year of high school. But he was so faithful through that, and I started to connect his trustworthiness to this gut feeling to take risks in seeking him. A couple of risks later, I ended up at Ohio State rooming with this girl I met on Facebook who said she wanted to pursue God too. Now I'm 2,332 miles from home, and it's been 4 years, and I could have never understood the magnitude of my obedience in that season. In hindsight, I'm a little shocked that I trusted God that much, but when I reflect on his character and faithfulness, it feels silly to think that I could have come up with a better alternative on my own. It's only in the last year and a half that I really come to understand God's desire for obedience. It began with understanding that God was not looking for me to do all of the right things like I thought he was. He simply wanted me to do everything with him. Jesus' life was marked by a joyful trust in and a delighted surrender to a Father who he was inseparable from. The difference for me between before and after was understanding who Jesus is. He was the one who literally spent his life to draw near to me. I had to understand that the obedience God modeled for and desired from me is itself love and not obligation. Jesus has shown me that it is the way of joy and freedom. I still resist it regularly, but as I come to know him more deeply, I learn that he is infinitely trustworthy and wise. My surrender is no longer a means to appease him, but to love him. It's accepting the depth of his love for me and reciprocating my love with action and sometimes restraint. Obedience has become the sweetest form of grace in my life, a path that allows me to walk hand in hand with perfect love, who is leading me in freedom and life in its fullest form. My name is Natalie Hatch, and this is my real life story.
Natalie, it's so encouraging to hear about the ways the Lord's been working in your life. So thank you so much for sharing. If you're watching Real Life tonight and you're interested in getting involved with the small group or even learning more about Cru Ohio State or how to even form a relationship with God, we would love to connect with you. The best way to do that is to click the link that's going to be in the chat, and we'd love to connect with you and get you involved with the small group. So we're going to give you guys a couple minutes to fill out that. Thanks for taking the time to fill that out, guys. I've got another awkward story coming your way, awkward date story. So it says, after my first kiss, I told my boyfriend, I can't believe I just had my first kiss. Then proceeded to call my friend and text people saying, I just had my first kiss. And I was still on the date. Yeah, that's pretty cringy. Thanks for sharing, guys. It's been really cool to go through these. Keep sending those in to the rest of the night. Like I said, the top 3 stories will be getting a $5 Stops gift card. So every week at Real Life, we get to hear a talk. And tonight, we get to hear from a special guest, Tyler Chernesky. Tyler is going to be talking about friendships, and he's a friend of our movement and also a pastor in Cincinnati. So really excited to hear about what he has to share. So let's hear from Tyler Chernesky.
What's up, Real Life? It is so good to be here with you virtually. And I already know what some of you are thinking. Bacho looks great. And I hate to be the one to break it to you, but I am not Bacho. My name is Tyler, and I am one of Bacho's dear friends. And Cru is one of my favorite organizations. So greetings to you, Cru at Ohio State and at Columbus State and at Central State. Tonight it is my honor to have 20 minutes with you to think about some very significant realities and relationships. But before we get there, I figure you should know just a little bit more about me. I currently live and work in Cincinnati, Ohio, where I am part of a church planting team We're launching a new church in Over the Rhine. It's a downtown neighborhood in Cincinnati. Our faith community is called City Church OTR. City Church OTR. You can find us at citychurchotr.com or on Instagram. And if you are ever in Cincinnati, we would love to meet you. Before I came to Cincy, I lived and worked as a pastor in Kansas City. Home of the Chiefs, a tough loss last weekend, but that's all right. We're still so proud. Before I was in Kansas City, I was in Chicago at seminary. And while I was in seminary, I actually had the profound privilege of helping plan Cru winter conferences. So if you've been to a winter conference, some of these large gatherings that Cru hosts in December to kick off the new year, I used to be part of planning the events and activities and what would happen on stage at winter conference with an awesome team. And that was such a privilege. And prior to that, I was a student at Indiana University, Hoosiers, and honestly, I am tempted to trash talk y'all, but I know, at least for my friends at Ohio State, that IU is just not even a contender, probably in your mind, where you don't pose any athletic threat to you. So I'll just keep my mouth shut, except to say that I loved my time in college. I just loved my time in college. And as I think about your time in college, specifically about the time that you've probably had over these past 11 months, I just want to begin by saying I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. Freshmen and sophomores, I'm sorry that you haven't got to experience the typical excitement and energy and kind of all that comes through big gatherings when things first begin on a college campus. I'm sorry that hasn't been your experience. And juniors and seniors, I'm sorry that things you've looked forward to have probably been canceled or radically reworked in some way. I'm sorry about that. I can imagine that so many things in these past few months have felt so different and so heartbreaking to so many of you. But above all, I can imagine that the past few months have been quite lonely, that they've been lonely. And I'm sure some of you might say, nah, Tyler, that's not me. I've been just fine. And to you, I'd say, I am so glad. But I feel fairly confident that many of you, if you're being honest, would say, yeah, I felt that familiar sting of loneliness time and time again over the past few months. And why do I feel confident in making the assumption that many of you feel lonely? Well, it's because many leading experts say that we are in the middle of a loneliness epidemic, I mean, did you know that leading health experts are currently discussing regularly the devastating effects that loneliness has on mental and physical health? Indeed, Dr. Vivek Murthy, who's the former Surgeon General of the United States, speaks about what he calls the loneliness epidemic in his book entitled Together. And Dr. Murthy reports that relationship and relational disconnection, loneliness, the absence of close community, is actually more dangerous than smoking or obesity. More dangerous than smoking or obesity. In other words, it would be better for you to have a cigarette than to have no friends. And that's not an endorsement of either, just a statement of reality. Dr. Murthy writes that loneliness and isolation have lasting and severe consequences on mental and physical health. So he advocates for the cultivation of deeper relationships. And he begins this book Together by writing of this cross-country journey that he took to better understand the loneliness epidemic in our country. And reflecting upon this road trip and summarizing it all up, he says to be at home is to be known. It's to be loved for who you are. And in community after community across the country as he traveled, he says, I met lonely people who felt homeless, even though they had roofs over their heads. They may not have been physically homeless, Dr. Murthy says, but they had no place to belong, and they did not know how to get started. So may I say, if you feel like you have no place to belong, and you don't know how to get started, you are in the right place. Your Cru movement wants to be a home to you. Your crew movement wants to be a place where you can be seen and known and valued. That's why we're having the conversation that we're having together tonight. It's because when it comes to being known and seen and feeling connected, we've all felt profound disappointment. And your movement knows it. And your movement knows that that's not the way it's supposed to be. I mean, honestly, friends, the loneliness epidemic isn't something we need the Surgeon General to tell us about, is it? It's something we've all seen and felt and experienced firsthand. And yet I'd contend that even though so many people know there's a loneliness epidemic in our time, even though so many folks have identified that problem, few folks have been able to offer a really substantial solution. People know that there's a massive loneliness problem in our world, but they don't know how to fix it. And tonight I'm hoping our conversation can be helpful towards that end. I'm hoping that things can be a little bit different here, that what we'll talk about will be life-giving to so many of us. So tonight, as we think about our own loneliness, as we think about our own desire to be seen and known and cared for, as we think about the fact that we might not feel like there's many people who know us deeply and fully, I'd just want to let you know right up front, we're not going to be discussing dating as a solution to that reality, though many, many folks believe that dating will solve their loneliness. And we're not going to be talking about marriage either. We're not going to be discussing open relationships or friends with benefits, sorry, but we will be talking about friendships, because I am convinced that friendship is what is missing in our world. I believe that friendship is the solution to the loneliness that we all feel. And I'm convinced that a tragically small view of friendship is what has led so many people to feel so alone. And why am I convinced of this? Well, it's because I'm a pastor. And because one of the realities in my job is that people open up the deepest parts of themselves to you as a pastor. It's just what happens. And so in my role, I have met married people that have been healthy and happy in their marriage, and I've met married people that have felt profoundly alone. I've met dating people who feel secure and confident that they're seen and known, and I've met dating people who feel like nobody actually knows them at their core. I've met single people that have been an absolute mess, and I've met single people that have experienced deep intimacy and feel profoundly valued in their communities and in their relationships. And I'm telling you, in every one of these circumstances, whether married or dating or single, the difference maker to whether or not people feel seen and known and valued is healthy friendship. Healthy friendship. It's what I've seen and what I've heard and what I've experienced. And so before we dive into specific postures or practices that can help us improve our friendships, if indeed our friendships are lacking a little bit, I just want to give a little context to friendship. I want to put things in context because I believe that we could all benefit from a brief conversation about what friendship is and what friendship can be from a biblical perspective. From a biblical perspective, you see, in our hypersexualized age, friendship has been devalued. We're suspicious that friendship can't actually fulfill us. We say, man, we need a boo or a bae. We don't need a bestie, right? We've said many times, sometimes explicitly, sometimes implicitly, that romantic relationships are the only relationships worth committed effort. That's kind of what Valentine's Day sometimes promotes, right? This holiday coming up this Sunday. We've said that romance is where real intimacy is found, in friendship, they're just for fun and lulls along the way. But in the process, I'm afraid we've devalued and we've lost a robust understanding of friendship. And that could not be farther from what the biblical text communicates. The Bible paints a different picture. The Bible teaches that friendship is a significant, devoted relationship between two people. How do I know this? Well, here's just one example. In Ecclesiastes 4, verse 9, the author writes, "Two are better than one." And my hunch is in our romance-saturated culture, many of us would hear that, two are better than one, and we'd say, of course they are. Two people in a romantic dating relationship. Yeah, that's better than one. Two are better than one. But what does the text really say? The author writes, two are better than one because they have a good return for their work. if one falls down, his friend, were you expecting that? His friend can help him up. Did you know that from beginning to end, the Bible paints a picture of friendship that's significant? It values friendship. It presents friendship as something that's devoted and robust and meaningful, a relationship between two people that really matters. In fact, the theologian Drew Hunter writes that you can summarize the entire biblical narrative by saying, in the beginning, we walked with God in friendship, but then we walked away. And now God is befriending us again. He says that friendship language is robust enough and significant enough to summarize the entire biblical narrative. Let me help make that case for you. Hunter notes that Adam, the first human we read about in Genesis chapter 1, in the first book of the Bible, Hunter writes that Adam is described as being God's friend. And Abraham, the person to whom God makes a big promise of, I'm going to be with you, Abraham. I'm going to be your God, and I'm going to change your whole life and everyone that you ever know. Abraham is explicitly called a friend of God throughout the Old and New Testament. In Exodus, we read that Moses spoke with God face to face as one speaks with a friend. And let's not forget the stories of David and Jonathan or Ruth and Naomi, these real historical figures whose friendships are documented in the Old Testament text. Friendship is valued in the scriptures. And then we arrive at the New Testament and we see that Jesus often faces misunderstanding because he is a, quote, friend of sinners. He eats with and he becomes friends with people that the so-called religious leaders of his day detested and refused to accept. I'm telling you, it cannot be denied. Throughout the entire biblical text, friendship is presented as a universal human good, an avenue of real intimacy that's available to all people regardless of marital status or gender or race or age. But sadly, in our culture, we have devalued friendship. Outside of Christian communities, we've said that romance is all that matters, that sex is where real intimacy is found. And inside of Christian communities, we haven't done much better. We've said that it's all about marriage, that people's deepest needs will be met once they find that spouse. And in the process, everyone has suffered. We need to recover a robust view of friendship. And how do we do that? How does that happen? Well, in our remaining time together, I've got just one suggestion, friends, and it comes from exploring the example of Jesus. See, when Jesus came to earth 2,000 years ago, when Jesus left heaven as God and took on human flesh to live as one of us, to walk on this world he created, to show us what humanity looks like in flesh, to see what God would do if God were one of us, right? And so we have this beautiful example of Jesus' life. When Jesus came to earth, and when he lived the most beautiful life that's ever been lived, he didn't come and find a partner. And Jesus didn't have a spouse. He wasn't ever married. But Jesus did have a best friend. And his best friend's name was John. John was with Jesus from the very beginning. He was one of the first disciples invited to follow Jesus. That means John spent hundreds, if not thousands of hours with Jesus. And after Jesus died and was resurrected, John wrote about his time with Jesus in the gospel that bears his name. And in John chapter 15, John, Jesus' best friend, records Jesus' final words, tender words, that Jesus said to those who were close to him. And in that text, we hear the words of Jesus through the pens of his best friend. And Jesus says, "Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants because a servant does not know his master's business, but instead I call you friends. For everything I learned from my Father I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit that will last, and so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give to you. This is my command: love each other." Here's the big idea of real life. Jesus came to earth to offer us his friendship. He came to earth to offer us his friendship, to invite us to be known and loved by him. And he came to earth to show us what friendship looks like. To show us what friendship looks like. What do I mean? Well, if I'm honest, I mean that Jesus, in all his interactions, he was entirely forthright with people. He told people what they needed to hear, not what was easy to hear. In this way, he modeled love. Jesus was kind. He didn't rub people's faces in their own mistakes. He encouraged them and loved them when they messed up. Jesus forgave freely and generously. In fact, as he's dying, he forgave the very people who were murdering him. He embodied self-sacrifice. He always said, you first. No, you first. One of his last acts was washing his followers' feet. He loved with all he had. In fact, that's probably why John said that he is love. See, in his death on the cross, Jesus not only provided us the opportunity to be friends with him, to be friends with God. People talk about this all the time, right? Like Jesus' death allows you to have a relationship with God. His death did that. But it also showed us how to be in relationship with others. Jesus said you're going to find deep, significant relationship with others when you pour yourself out for their good. And when you do that, Jesus says, when you follow my example in that way, you'll be blown away by the intimacy that results. And Jesus says, this is what's going to cure that lonely ache you feel in your heart. In other words, you can build friendships that last because Jesus has called you his friend. He has shown you and he has shown me what it means to love and to love well, and he has invited us to follow his example. So how do we fight this loneliness epidemic? How do we fulfill the real and deep human need that we all have to be known and seen and loved? Well, friends, I just want to submit one idea to you, that maybe the way you could fight loneliness in your own life is to embrace a more robust view of friendship. Because friendship is so often neglected in our world, but we have the opportunity to choose to live differently, whether we're freshmen or seniors or staff. We can live differently, whether we're dating or single. We can commit to embrace a vision of friendship that is absolutely radical. A vision of friendship that doesn't just see friends as these casual people that enter and exit our lives without any real contact or without making any real change on us, but instead views friendship as a way that we can refine ourselves and serve others and pour out our lives for the good of people that we love in the same way that Jesus poured out his life for us. Now, to help us towards that goal, I want to leave you, Real Life, with one final question, and I'll be the first to admit that it's a big question. And it's a probing question. It might even be a heavy question, but I'm hoping that it can be a clarifying question for each of us. As you think about building deeper friendships, as you think about whether or not friendship might be the solution to the relational ache that you feel, to that desire you have to be known and loved, I want to ask you, are you the kind of friend that you would want? Are you the kind of friend that you would want? In other words, are you friending others as you would have others friend you? Are you as kind as you want your friends to be kind to you? Are you as good of a listener as you want your friends to listen well to you? Are you forgiving in the way that you want to be forgiven? Do you encourage others in the way that you would like to be encouraged? Friends, I'm not trying to heap a bunch of guilt or shame on you. I don't believe in that at all. I'm just saying by this question, are you being the kind of friend that you would love to have in return? Perhaps this is the answer to the loneliness gap you feel. Perhaps by being more like Jesus, by being the kind of friends that you wish others would be to you, you will find deeper, more intimate relationships, and your soul will find the encouragement and the support that it so desperately needs. That's been true in my experience. If anything's made the difference in my life as a single person, see, no rings, right? All my single ladies, all my single friends, hands up, right? That was weird. But as a single person, The difference maker in my life has been rich friendships. And if you would have told me at age 19 that I would feel as loved or as known as I do, I wouldn't have believed you. And God has answered my prayers for connection, not through a spouse and not through dating, but through deep friendship. And it might be what he has for you in this season. You know, when I was walking through my resume at the beginning of the time, telling you about what schools I attended and where I've worked, I neglected to say that for a little season, I worked as a children's librarian, which means that one of my life heroes is Fred Rogers of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And in one interview specifically, Mr. Rogers once said, "The greatest thing we can do is help someone know that they are loved and capable of loving." I want to submit to you that that is what Jesus has done for us. By his sacrifice for us on the cross, he's let us know that we are loved by God, and he's made us capable of loving others. And now, real life, we have the opportunity to pass that gift along to others. And passing that gift along is not confined to dating or marriage. It's something we do in friendship. So let's be the kinds of people who give others the gift of friendship. That is my prayer for you. So would you receive this blessing? Lord, may you richly and deeply bless everyone who's tuning in tonight with better and deeper relationships. May you remind them of the fact that you are their friend, and would you allow their friendship with you to blossom into beautiful friendships with others. And if anyone out there, God, who's hearing me tonight would say, actually, I'm not a friend of God, I don't even know what that means, would you give them now in this moment the courage to voice that to someone who's on their campus, or maybe a friend who they're watching with, and for them to discover what friendship with you looks like? Would you bless us all in that way, God? Friends, it's been so good to be with you this evening. Blessings from Cincinnati.
When it feels like the dark lingers longer than the night, when the shadows feel like giants, are you chasing me down? Tell me, where could I run from your love? Where could I hide? Hands within your precious thoughts. There's no hiding from your love. Highs and lows, Lord, you're with me either way it goes. Should I rise or should I fall? Even so, Lord, your mercy is an even flow. You're too good to let me go. Should I dance on the heights and make my bed out on the depths? Mercy waits at every end, like you planned it from the start. Should the dawn come with wings or find me far side of the sea, there your hand still fastens me ever closer. faithful through it all. You're too good to let me go. You are faithful through it all. You're too good to let me go. Highs and lows, you surround me the way it goes. Should I rise or should I fall? Lord, you're with me through it all. Highs and lows, in the rhythms of your grace I know. Should I rise or should I fall? You are faithful through it all. You're too good to let me go.
Tyler, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's so encouraging for you to just talk about how important friendships are in our lives and even the challenge of assessing about what it looks like for us to be a good friend to others. So thank you so much, Tyler. Guys, we have the 3 winners of our awkward relationship stories that you guys sent in. So the winners are, in no particular order, peed my pants, bloody face, and dated a criminal. Guys, it was super funny to hear all of your responses, so thanks for participating in that with us tonight. And it was good to have a little fun with y'all and in that. If you guys are interested in creating, and the Collective is a learning community for you. So the Collective is a learning community of Career Ohio State. It's a space for creators to connect with other people in community and just have a space to feel inspired to create things that you feel gifted and called to. And so the Collective will be meeting monthly. And if you're interested in joining, being a part of that, feel free to email Megan Hawk to be added to the group me. Well, guys, this was a really awesome night. We are so grateful you guys tuned in. Feel free to catch us next week for Real Life at 7, 8 o'clock, same time, same place. And always remember, you are loved. Have a great night.